to get started. Welcome back for another lecture series, and I'm very happy that the microphones are working. I hope you'll be coming to the next couple lectures too, and I'm going to have our business professor, Carl Gahala, introduce our speakers tonight.
So welcome again. Thank you all for joining us for tonight's fall lecture series. So this is the third of our lecture series presentations. So we'll have two more, one next week and the following week. So as Dr. Chris Hayes mentioned, I'm Carl Gahala. I teach business classes here. So I'm pleased to introduce tonight's panelists and our moderator. So our panelists are Janice Lampron. She's an executive assistant to the CEO at Lesaffre Yeast Corporation. From Ottawa, Illinois, she studied at Bradley University and received a BA in French with a minor in business. Intrigued by international cultures and languages from a young age, Janice started formally learning French in school around 13 years old. She studied abroad a semester in France and worked as well a summer in Quebec City. Delphine, and I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name, is the Director of Human Resources for North American subsidiaries of Manitou Group, a global material handling and compact equipment manufacturer headquartered in France. She joined Manitou in 2010, working from the corporate headquarters in France as an HR manager before crossing the Atlantic to West Bend, Wisconsin in 2014. She's also an ambassador to the Chamber of Commerce in West Bend and holds a Master of Business Administration with a specialization in human resources. Severine Zaslavski is a director of Manpower's MyPath programs, a groundbreaking program that helps people access jobs in growth sectors and develop in their careers through upskilling opportunities, personalized guidance, and support. Severine joined Manpower Group in January of 2012 to lead the global manufacturing of Esperos and Manpower, which are the staffing brands under Manpower's family of brands. Severine received her Master of Management in Marketing from Northwestern University's Kellogg Graduate School of Management. She's fluent in English, French, and Mandarin Chinese. Andrea Jett Fletcher is the Executive Director of French American Chamber of Commerce, FAAC of Chicago. The FAAC Chicago is one of 18 French American Chambers of Commerce in the US and a part of the network of 128 French chambers around the world. The FACC connects the local French American business community through networking events and learning opportunities and supports French businesses and entrepreneurs exploring the US market. Andrea holds a master's degree in public policy from the University of Chicago and an undergraduate degree from Georgetown University. And Andrea is our moderator, so please welcome our guest.
So we have two working microphones, so if you want to, or just one passing, how you want to work.
I think we were just going to start by letting our presenters give an overview of their companies, and then we'll go into the questions.
Oh, hold on,
Severine, you first.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. Well, thank you for coming, and I hope we can answer some of your questions. Nous cannot. Do I need to do something on this?
Yeah, it is on.
Can you hear me now?
That's better.
So I really need to hold the microphone to my mouth. Okay.
We'll try to do that. So a few things is that I work for a company called Manpower Group, which is an American company. It is a global providers of workforce solutions. We are probably most known for the staffing business. Most of you may have had like friends, family, who started their careers actually working in the temp, as a temp for Manpower. The company is 70 years old, started in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, And from there, expanded a whole lot. We continue to have a staffing business, but we also have evolved alongside with our clients, and today we provide additional services. We do overtake usually the HR and recruiting function for them. We manage their service providers as well, and we do a whole lot of workforce consulting. As you know, the world is changing. The skills market is evolving faster than we can actually say skills market. And so there is really a need to help those companies, our clients, to upskill and move their organizations around so that they can really utilize and optimize their workforce. So with that, I do have a video. Should we go with the video? That will do probably a better job to tell you what is it that we do. And not.
The old ways are gone. The boxes, the ceilings. Think about it. People leapfrog cities, states, and oceans to get what they want. They break open new frontiers, recreate themselves again and again. But it's not about technology or money or systems. It's talent, will, imagination. This is the human age. Our mission? To harness this amazing energy, to connect the passion of individuals to the ambition of business. People have more power to move the world forward than ever before. We are the Manpower Group. We are tens of thousands of people in more than 80 countries. From workforce assessment, recruiting, and training, to career management, talent-based outsourcing, and workforce consulting, we create innovative workforce solutions that help companies succeed and individuals realize their own potential. Every day, millions of people go to work because of us. Information flows, productivity soars, industries are born, and cities rise as we connect people with possibilities. We are the Manpower Group. We power the people who power the world of work. Because what was once impossible is now only humanly possible.
All right. So, why am I here? Why is this very American company here in West Bend tonight when we're supposed to talk about the French people? And as you can see, Manpower Group is actually implemented everywhere in the world. And as it turns out, our largest market happens to be France. We started in France with Manpower about the same time as the US, a little bit behind. But since then, the business has exploded, and Manpower is the leader in the staffing market in France, but also, and because of its position, is the center of innovation for all of our companies in the world. And you can see here how big it is. We manage about 2 million work assignments per year. And that means that we put almost 100,000 people to work every single day, which is not, if you think in terms of payrolling this, it is not an easy task. But also, we help people launch their careers, and just last year we're able to place people in 16,000 jobs. We service 80,000 clients. This is only in France. So altogether a very large market, and our connection with France from Milwaukee is real, and potentially this is why I am here. So with this,
Hello everybody, I'm Janice Lampron. I work for Lesaffre. It's a French company based in Lille, France. With a headquarters for North America here in Milwaukee. So we recently adopted a tagline, working together to better nourish and protect the planet. And it means for us, we are masters of fermentation and living organisms. We want to feed people, nourish people, and animals. We want to make products that everyone will enjoy. And you'll see a couple other things here. Just a couple of key figures about the company. We're looking at about 2 billion euros at the company headquartered level for turnover revenue. We've got more than 165 years of history. It's still a family-owned private company. You'll find us in 50 countries. We have things called R&D centers where we're working on the next iteration and the next new products. We're also making some acquisitions in new technologies. We started off basically as a yeast company, and now we're working with yeast and enzymes, or yeast and new bacteria, or things to improve products around us. Let's see. I also have a video, but first I just wanted to share the different ways that our products are being used, and most of them are yeast based. So we have kind of at the top of the diagram, you'll see fermentus, and that is for distilling and making beer and wine. So that's the yeast that is used for that. Enolise is making flavors and aromas. Biospringer is actually yeast extract, which is also making flavors. Leaf is the alcohol fermentation for alcohol for ethanol, so it's for biofuels. Procellus down on the bottom is using yeast extract to make fermentation aids for other things that are being fermented. Abrexin is for plant health. And then we get into Filio, which is animal nutrition and animal feed. And human care. So if anybody has ever tried nutritional yeast, that's one thing that our Lesaffre makes and sells. And then we have kind of the bread making, bread for yeast for bread, yeast for pizza, for improving all kinds of baked goods. So I will play my quicker video, but I think I need to put it on it. So let's try this. See some of the plant sites from around the world as well. I think one other thing I may have forgot to mention is I am working as an executive assistant for the CFO of the company in the States. been with the company about 17 years, so got a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Good evening. It's great for me because I'm learning as well about other company and it's kind of cool. So my name is Delphine. I spare my last name because it's too French, I think. So I'm working for a company called Manitou Group for almost 10 years now. I arrived in USA almost 6 years ago with my family, and I guess we enjoy being here because we are still there. So the same as my colleagues. I'm going to show you a video because that's going to be much better than my broken English. So that is the mission of our group, so that I wanted to share because it's very important for me as an HR person to see what we are doing to our company. We are not only making big machines, as you see, but we are actually making sure that our people are working in good condition, are safe, and in efficiency manner. So I'm not going to go through all the slides because the video was not supposed to work, but it works. So it's much better. So as you as you see, so we are in the business from for the first forklift was invented by Marcel Brault, who is our founder, in 1958. And so we kept growing and growing since that date. And so the French company decided to expand and come in the US in 2008 because they wanted to expand their markets. And the USA, it's obviously a market that you cannot miss. So the company arrived in 2008 in the American market, and so they keep sending over some French people to understand how those two countries can work together.
Is that, are you?
Yeah, I'm just on the
Okay.
European side.
So your US headquarters is here?
Yes.
Okay. So we have, we're lucky enough to have an interesting range of perspectives with one American woman working for a French company, a French woman working for an American company, and a French woman working for a French company with the US headquarters here. So given that, can you all just sort of talk briefly about the biggest culture shock you felt, either as a French person working in the US or as an American working for a French company?
I can start.
Yeah,
There's,
go ahead.
that's there are so many. So I think the biggest one when I arrived here 6 years ago, everybody always laugh about it. It's just the word awesome. Like everybody like came to me and they were saying, "Where are you coming from?" With my accent, obviously, and so from France, and so. Oh, that's awesome! And everybody was just like, "It's amazing!" And like the biggest culture shock for me, like French are much more reserved in the professional world and the like business environment. So when everybody arrived to me and said, "Oh, that's awesome!" Like American is just like so much at the beginning. It was like very hard for me to handle that much happiness. I don't know. So we're like the French people are much more reserved, and so in the professional world. That we are here, we are working, we don't talk about our family right away. You get to know a little bit the people before like going like through like, but in America it's the opposite. Everybody is just saying, "Oh, I have kids, I have like you have picture of dogs and weddings everywhere," and so that was always like, I was a lot at the beginning. That's my biggest shock.
Well, picking up on that very same idea, for me, it was interesting. The first company I worked in when I arrived in the US was SC Johnson. So I was in Racine, and it was election years. And I won't say which election, and I won't say what. But what really was interesting to me was that people brought in vote for candidate's name inside of their cubicles, and I was just like, "What are you doing?" and for French people, it's the same thing that the family photos, and you would never say who you're voting for. It would definitely not bring that. And so it was interesting for me, and I think that there is an openness and a transparency in the US that you don't necessarily see. In France, and so when you come in, it's a bit of a shock, but it's all good.
I don't know if I experienced a big culture shock working for Lesaffre, but I think I experienced the shock of just it was my first job out of college, and so I learned how to, behave and act in the business world and interact with the right people. My boss comes from Minnesota, so he's not French. But, I experienced some interesting, I guess, interactions working with the leadership of Lesaffre from France when they would come visit, or, I guess the same examples that have been given, but we host several French people working for Lesaffre in America, and just being a friendly person to them and being a contact to them, or helping with anything they need, providing them an example of what a nice American can be like, I guess. But that's about all I would say. I would say our company is very welcoming to everyone. We have a good kind of family culture. Yes, sir.
For hold on to the mic.
Okay.
For Janice and Delphine specifically, how do you both see the French companies that have U.S. headquarters here? Sorry. How do you see both French and American business values kind of merging in your company?
Mentioning just before, I see a lot of Lesaffre is really a company that takes care of its employees. We have maybe generous vacation or generous benefits, and I believe it stems back from, a company that wants to make it a nice place to work and wants to keep the people that are good. So I would say it's kind of a family culture, taking care of everyone and being quite open and communicating.
For me, we had a lot of French who came over the past few years. We had like 10 family, I think, who came and worked at the US headquarters. So, and more you have cross-management, meaning that you have people from USA who is reporting to people in France, so that you have the 7-hour differences that make that you need to do meeting in the morning. And so that's, I think if we talked about the value, one of the biggest value that the French learn from America, it's the punctuality. We were just talking about that with my husband just before coming. So that was like one of the biggest things is like now, believe it or not, but French are on time during the meeting. So it is something that definitely helped the company. And on the opposite way, the American understood very well the French coffee break. So it's very funny when you have like several French working on one department that how all the culture work together. And we have 2 Americans actually that we send in our corporate headquarters in France. And so that's one of the things that they were saying. They were like, you guys are in coffee break all the time. Yeah, it's the way we think.
So for Severine, as a French strategic program director with a long career working for U.S. companies, can you tell us some of the differences between U.S. and French sort of business strategy execution?
Strategy execution can be similar. What struck me is there is an approach into projects that's slightly different. Unbeknownst to the rest of the world, the French tends to be actually not only reserved but also very analytical. We're a culture that puts engineers into very high status. This is how we recruit in schools, how we recruit in companies. And so what it does is that whenever I've been working on a project and more recently working on innovation for Manpower Group, I found that there is a lot of analysis that goes on and a lot of paralysis perhaps that goes along with it, coming from the French side, whereas the U.S. side, and this is it provokes actually a little bit of a culture clash between the 2 sides of the company. The U.S., believe it or not, is very entrepreneurial, and so decisions are made much faster. And what the heck, we'll do it and we'll make it happen. And so it's very interesting to see the French side going, whoa, wait, we need to think about it. And the colleagues are like, no, don't worry, we'll figure it out as we go. And unfortunately, the agile process tends to favor the American side. So I guess we'll have a lot of conversation ahead. But I think the blending of the 2 in the end helps actually get out of the paralysis, and the analytical side helps us make better decisions. So this is a case where both culture actually can coexist and work well, but it takes a little bit of communication adjustment to get there.
Delphine, as a French HR director in the U.S., what are some of the big differences you see in recruiting strategies in the U.S. versus in France? Differences in how candidates present themselves and how you would interview or select them?
I would say that the processes are the same. We are a global company, so we had to adjust our processes, and we are working like with tools that we are working with across the world. So the processes are kind of the same. I would say that, and I'm sure Severine you had that, but like the resume is going to be totally different. Like the American resume, it's just like very, like you have a white page, black, and that's it. In France, you have the picture, you have the color, usually it's blue. I just received a resume from a French guy today. It's like orange, blue, green. No, that was a little bit too much. but yeah, it's like, so the resume and on the office people, that's kind of the same, I would say, same approach. The production workers are much more different. Like in France, people are taking care of themselves. So when I recruit in South Dakota for an assembler or for a painter, like people don't care how they look when they came at the lobby. So it's much more that. And then after we be on the contract. In France, you have a contract, you have to sign it. It's very important. Here in the US, it's not mandatory to have a contract. So you just can come, you work, it's at will, and in 2 weeks you are gone. So that's like totally different process for that.
Severine, do you have anything to add from the Manpower perspective, even though that's not totally your area? But
No, well, it is. It's somewhere we do recruiting, and so yes, there is the regulatory environment is very makes the behavior change a lot, and so you described the side of the candidate, and then from what I've observed is that when a company hires in France, you will believe the processes that are in place. Typically, I see like 3-4 assessments taking place before. So yeah, behavioral and knowledge and attitudes, technical, soft skills, everything. And actually, the most of the recruitment processes, even for mid-sized companies, are attached to a process. So after the assessment, questions are sent to the HR person who is going to have questions given to them. So it's very codified. And the reason is that it's to hire somebody in France is very expensive, and to fire somebody in France is impossible. So you have, when you hire somebody, you really like put all the checks in place before that happens. And obviously, this is not the case necessarily in the US, where the risks that organizations are taking is much lower. And so, as a result of that, we see slightly different processes. That's the take on it. But we are seeing overall, whether it's the US or France, companies starting to really present themselves better and better because there is a talent shortage, and it is getting more difficult to hire somebody, and so that seems to be the common trait around those continents.
as global organizations, are any of you seeing an impact of tariffs or some of the new work visa policies that have been recently put in place? Are they impacting your business?
I think we have a few people in my company who are on certain visas that need sponsorship by the company, and we have, experienced some delays in those being processed, and perhaps that's an effect of the, immigration policies or trends right now.
The same, we experience a lot of delays since President Trump. So that's in the visa and immigration processes. we have been impacted a lot, obviously, by the tariff as we export the machine, so and some parts as well. So that's, but we have a very good lawyer, so that's good.
That's always a good idea.
Do you have anything on the visa side, maybe?
On the visa side, yes, the impact, it impacts more the US than it impacts France or Europe at this point of time, but yeah, the skills are getting more global, and so if there is a shortage of skills, and there is in the field of IT and engineering, those are the primary sectors that are touched by the talent shortage. It is very difficult now to bring people from overseas to cover those jobs. So, but that said, it's not impossible, and yeah, with good lawyers, sure, you can do it. Anything is possible. Yeah.
Do you see, for any of you, do you see Brexit affecting your business at all?
So, Brexit is for us in Manpower Group. Brexit is impacting us because a lot of our clients were UK based, and as UK has been in a flux of, I mean, they don't really know what the future holds for them. A lot of companies have actually stopped some of their hiring. A lot of other companies are actually, who are not based in the UK, but European companies are trying to move their European headquarters back in other countries. So yeah, it has slowed down the UK economy. I think it's picking up. A lot of companies actually saying, okay, fine, we'll deal with this. But that has been the impact. Yeah. It's a tough question. It's a very tough question.
Yeah. The same as Severine, actually, that in the US we haven't seen the impact at all.
Right.
But from a growth perspective, because we are doing, like UK is one of our biggest customer, the impact, but yeah, it's the same, we deal with it.
Janice, anything?
Probably not. I know that Lesaffre is present in the UK, and there could be someone who's affected. I personally don't know.
That's good news.
Yeah.
My final question. So for the students in the room, what advice would you give to anybody who is just starting their career and is really interested in working for a global company like yours?
I would say definitely learn another language. It doesn't have to be French, but try to diversify your language skills. For me, I decided to have a minor in business, which means that I got a sample of all kinds of things in business. It wasn't necessarily international business, but I did some accounting, I did some marketing, I did some, just a little bit of everything to get exposed. And I would recommend studying abroad in anywhere, and to see a different culture, have experience, meet different people, and come to events like this so you can learn something.
What I've told my children is learn to be a learner. And the reason for that is the next generation coming into the marketplace is going to see much more changes that we've already seen ourselves. The pace of change is accelerating. We see it every day. There are new gadgets that comes in. We see jobs that disappear because the task has been replaced and automated. So I think that the new generation of young people entering the workplace is very likely to have to change, not even mid-career, but within a decade, they will have to change and learn new skills. So it's not so much, I used to say to my kids, be an engineer and shut up. But I've changed that. I'm sort of like, I really think that the important thing is for them to open up their mind and to be able to capture knowledge. And you're right, I mean, whether you start by learning a foreign language, this is the first of like the start of opening your own learnability, if I may say. And so that's the advice. It's like don't get cornered. It's like I like to do this. I want to do this. This is not going to be helpful. It's really to push yourself to go anywhere and to absorb learning and to learn how to do this faster and better.
So my advice for the young generation is don't hesitate to take some risk, and like I would say, and go for it, because it's really like if I would not have taken some risk, I won't be here today. I won't be HR director, and I probably won't be who I am like talking in Wisconsin. I was like, so it's really for me like get out of your comfort zone. When I came here, like I was totally freaking out. Like I arrived here alone. My husband arrived 1 month after, and with my son, and I was like, I want to get out of here. I don't understand what they are saying. They are saying awesome every 2 words. And so that was very difficult. So, and I was totally out of my comfort zone. I was in France. I worked 4 years in the production in France, so everybody knew me. I knew everybody. I arrived here, I was nobody. I was a number in America who doesn't speak English. So that was very, very hard, and I fought, and I had some people who pushed me and say, believe in you, believe in yourself. And so like 5 years, even not 5 years after, 3 years after, I was establishing a partnership with the United Nations. So it's just like, and I would have never thought that before. So yes, it's take some risk, don't be afraid, and get out of your comfort zone. I know that Wisconsin is the best place to be in the world, but there are other things to see in the world.
Thank you all very much. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll my microphone. So thank you very much. Thanks. So I'll run the mic up to you if you have any questions. Here we go.
Why did Lesaffre pick Milwaukee as their U.S. headquarters?
Okay, so the story of how Lesaffre came to Milwaukee, involves an acquisition. So if anybody remembers an old company called Universal Foods, they had a yeast division for Red Star yeast. And Lesaffre came in and bought the yeast division from Universal Foods in 2001, and then established their headquarters here in Milwaukee. We had a plant, a manufacturing facility in Milwaukee, which was closed around 2005, when we built a brand new facility in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And unfortunately, nobody likes to close a plant, but it was probably the best decision for the company at the time. Our plant in Cedar Rapids is growing and expanding all the time with the business. And we also have a secondary location in Dothan, Alabama that's producing yeast for us. That's how Lesaffre came to Milwaukee.
Other questions? Well, I have a question. This is, not sure exactly how to frame it, but obviously one of the things that when you're hiring, when your companies are hiring, you're thinking about what is the background and education of students, and you have a sense of what the differences between the United States and the French, hiring young people as to what their background in schools are like? Are they different? Do they bring different kinds of skills and lack certain kinds of skills? Is there something that is different about how the French are training students versus how the American?
Have to see.
I realized it was a general question.
I would say what a common trend is the diploma. It's very important, either you are in France or in the US, that we are paying attention of the degree that people have. And I would say that here in the US it's so big that you don't pay attention of one particular school. When in France, I remember when I recruit for some engineer, we were seeking for, engineer from that school. So that I don't see that very much here in the US because it's so broad, and I would say the unemployment rate is so low as well that you have to seek for candidates, so they are not coming to you. So yeah.
Okay. That's all.
Good evening. I am a French teacher here in West Bend High School, and I have lots of students who are interested in being able to find jobs or careers where they can use their French. How important is it in your companies to have some French language skills? And what advice would you give? You've given some advice, but are there any particular things students should study or look for that might get them a job or an internship in a French company?
So for our company in Manitou, like speak French is always a bonus because we have so much interaction between like the business in the US and the corporate headquarters in France. You have, like, as I said, some people who are reporting directly to a French manager over in France. And then you have processes who are put in place by French people. So that's not the same way of thinking that American would do. I take one very recent example that we were looking for a product distribution manager for one of our distribution center in Baltimore. And I don't know how, but we find a French guy living in Detroit who used to work for Manitou like 15 years ago. So I don't know how we did that, but we did. So, and we see that very beneficial that he was actually French, and because that was so easy to connect him with our colleagues in France who are doing the kind of the same activity but in Belgium. So that's really, for us it's really important because any processes, because we are the biggest subsidiary of the group, that's like it's with us that actually France have the most interaction. So all the processes and are like working together. So that's, yeah.
So, as someone who got a job in a French company because I was interested in French, I kind of credit the studying abroad, being immersed in the language, as well as communication. Those are some good classes to take. I took one special one, which was business communication in French, so French business communication. So you learn something about the culture, you learn something about how we are communicating a bit differently versus our French colleagues, and how to communicate on their level, or to rein it in and try to be more maybe brief or more direct. But for some reason I took the US business communication and the French business communication in the same semester, and that would just like blew my mind. But, so I would recommend that. I would recommend, finding any opportunity you can to experience the language that you're interested in, studying abroad, immersing yourself. With the internet nowadays, you can watch French TV and movies and listen to French music anytime. So anything you can to have more cultural reference is good.
Just to add to that, so I work for the French American Chamber of Commerce. We are active in Chicago and in Milwaukee, and we have members in Chicago and in Milwaukee, but our only physical office is in Chicago for the moment. So one of the things we do is, this is just from a practical perspective, that one thing that might be helpful is when we're looking for an intern, we blast an email to every French department of every university around their office. And then we get great part-time interns who are still in school but who help us out. And I can't speak for any of the companies present, but there are a lot of French companies in the Milwaukee area and around here. So if there's any way for your school to connect with them in some way, that might be a good first step.
Hi, thanks for this has been very enlightening. Question though, you talked a little bit before about the difficulties of particularly the French nationals to come over to the U.S. to find employment. What, for somebody that does come over from France and is doing it on a legal visa, what difficulties or obstacles will they run into to potentially work for your country if they don't have a Social Security number?
Well, you have to have an American Social Security number, so that's the first thing that we ask. But what is funny, it's you need to have a Social Security number, but to get paid, you need a Social Security number too. But when you arrive in the US, it took like 2 weeks to get a Social Security number. So it's just like the process that you have. And so, but people who arrived here, it's one thing that we say to all the people who are coming, say, you need to have some cash before because we cannot pay you for 2 weeks. Well, of course, we are doing on the French side, but it's kind of interesting at how it works. That and the visa processes from a French person who is under visa. It is, I would say, painful the first time because you have like 500 questions to answer, and it's always no, and there are some like totally stupid questions, to be honest. But after it's you have to renew it or then go on green card if you can. So that's one of the process, but it's administrative processes, I would say. I don't know if it's answered the question really.
There's one thing that if to come here you need to be sponsored by a company, because in addition to the Social Security number and the fact you need to have a proper visa, the other thing is that when you come here you don't have any credit history.
Yeah.
You don't have any, so you can't, renting a house is close to impossible.
Yeah.
Driving, you're starting your administrative life from scratch.
Yeah.
And I remember when I came here, although I had been driving for, I don't know how many years, I had to go back and I had it was a 6 months driving license that it's almost like, I need to have my husband with me whenever I took the wheel. It was just like, you start really from zero, but it is, I know that some, whether they are French or from other countries, but I've seen people coming in without the support of a company, and it is very, very challenging, for sure.
You're probably aware that Milwaukee has language immersion schools.
Yep.
and there is a French immersion school that feeds into the Milwaukee School of Languages, which educates the children in French all the way up through high school. Have you been able to have any contact or reach out to these students?
So I'm aware of the French immersion school, and I haven't had direct contact, but I have donated all of my children's books that were in French to the school. So it's an indirect contact.
Very good idea. Thank you. For me, I was in contact with them through a challenge, meaning that I don't remember which one was that. There was a contest for the children, for the kids from different schools, and so we had, and so they had to. There was a French contest, so and I was part of the jury. And so they get to say a poem by heart, and that was like all French. And so we got some students from the immersion school of the French immersion school of Milwaukee, and they were actually very good. So usually that's it. The R in French, how they are like very different. Like we have hard time to pronounce your R, but you guys have hard time to pronounce our R, and and so they were actually very good. So, but other than that, not really.
Any more questions? All right, well then, thank you very much for your presentation, and I hope to see some of you next week for the talk on French criminal justice system by an attorney, and we'll hopefully have the sound system working a little better next week. We'll see. Thank you again. Thank you.